Okay, for topic 5, we're going to write a fraction as a percent, and there are really two methods for doing this, and I am going to kind of show you both. There are certain situations where one method is definitely going to be easier than the other, and then in other situations, the other method is going to be easier than the other. Just kind of depends, okay? So I wrote here it's easiest to convert using a proportion, and that is generally speaking, that's going to be quite true, okay? What we want to do is we want to set whatever the fraction is. So we've got a fraction to begin with. We want to convert it to a percent. So we want to take whatever our fraction is and set it equal to a fraction that is the percent over 100, okay? So you've got some fraction a over b. You want to convert it to a percent. So we would just set that equal to percent, whatever the percent is, over 100, and then we can solve really, really easily, okay? And so you solve for the percent and then just make sure you tack on a percent symbol at the end. Now, the other alternate method, you can convert to a decimal. So convert your fraction to a decimal and then convert the decimal to a percent. And that's an easier method in some cases, especially if you have a fraction, especially if you have a calculator, excuse me. So this alternate method is really, really easy, but sometimes if you get like weird numbers, it can be a little bit harder to work with. It just depends on the person. It depends on the fraction that you're starting with. I don't ultimately care which method you choose to use. Just make sure you can back up whichever method using some work, like show your steps, okay? So for example 5, it says write each fraction as a percent. Well, we have 7 over 40. So 7 over 40 would be one that's going to be pretty easy to do using the alternate method as long as you have a calculator, okay? It does make it a lot easier if you have a calculator. So I'll show you that one at the end, but for now, let's do the method that I've outlined right here. So we want to take our 7 over 40 and we're going to set it equal to percent. So I'm just going to use the letter P for percent over 100. And then we have to kind of travel back to chapter 5 and remind ourselves, hey, how do we solve a percent? Remember, we cross multiply and solve. So when I cross multiply, remember that's multiplying along the diagonals. So I would get 40 times P equals 7 times 100. So that's going to be 40P equals 700. And then I want to get my P alone, so I would divide both sides by 40. And so I get P equals 700 over 40. And this is where I would just jump over to the calculator and use my calculator. So 700 divided by 40, you would be welcome to use a calculator as long as you show all of your work. So 700 divided by 40, and we get 17.5. So we would say, hey, P is 17.5. So my final answer is going to be 17.5. Don't forget to add your percent symbol. If you don't add the percent symbol, it's not correct. Okay. So we get 17.5%. Now, the alternate method would be to convert 7 over 40 into a decimal. And so we just do that by dividing the numerator by the denominator. So I could say, okay, I've got 7. I want to divide it by 40. I'm going to get some kind of a decimal. And then all we would have to do is convert this decimal to a percent by moving the decimal to the right twice, which is really the same as just multiplying it by 100. Whoops. Hold on. Let me start over. So 7 divided by 40, we get the decimal, and then we want to multiply it by 100, and we get the 17.5. So you just have to add the percent symbol. So you can do either method. Again, I don't really care which method you choose to use, but you need to be able to back it up by showing the steps. Remember, the calculator is only there to do the side work. You still have to show all the work. The calculator just does the side work, okay? So next we have 2 1/4. We want to write this as a percent. So since we're dealing with a mixed number instead of a fraction, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to convert this to its equivalent improper fraction, okay? And remember, to convert a mixed number into an improper fraction, we take the denominator, multiply it by the whole number. So 4 times 2 is 8. And then we want to add the numerator, which makes that 9. And then we just keep the original denominator, okay? So now I've got 9 over 4 equals P over 100. So I get 4P equals 9 times 100, which we can go ahead and just do that work there. 9 times 100 is 900. And then I want to divide everything by 4. And we get that P is equal to, well, if we go to the calculator, we get 900 divided by 4 is 225. And let's talk about this to make sure this makes sense to everybody. So we get 225, and remember it is 225%. So does this make sense? Well, it should, okay? Because remember, if you're dealing with converting just a decimal to a percent, this as a decimal would just be 2.25, okay? Well, this right here tells me that I have two whole, so that means 200. Remember, because remember, when you're dealing with a percent, a whole is 100. So when we have something in front of the decimal, that represents a whole. So we have two wholes, so 200, and then this represents some kind of a percent. So we would move the decimal twice, and we get 225%, okay? So when you have a mixed number like this, you're going to get whatever the whole number is, that's going to be two wholes, so 200, and then 1/4 needs to be converted to a percent. So it does make sense here that this would be more than 100, okay? Now, finally, we have 3/17, and it says round to the nearest tenth of a percent. So depending on which method you choose, this is going to look a little bit different. So let's just do the first method, the one that we have outlined over here. So we have 3/17 equals P over 100. So I get 17P equals 3 times 100, which is just 300. We divide both sides by 17. That's going to give me P equals, well, on the calculator, we had 300 divided by 17. We're going to get some kind of, we're expecting an icky decimal because it tells us to round. So we get 17.647058882, okay? So we'll do 16 or 17.647. That's what I'll write on our worksheet. 17.647. So we get 17.647. But remember, the directions told us to round to the nearest tenth of a percent. So rounding to the nearest tenth, that's going to be the 6. So to the right of that, I have a 4, which tells me to round down. So we're going to say this is approximately 17.6%. Okay. Now let's say you were going to do the alternate method where you just convert your answer to a decimal and then you convert it to a percent. So we would take 3 and divide it by 17. So we get 0.17647, blah, blah, blah. Well, we would have to convert this to percent form first, which means move your decimal to the right twice. So we would multiply by 100, which gives us the 17.647, and then round it. So you have to, when you do the fraction to a decimal and then decimal to a percent, you have to convert it to percent form first, then round second. So be really, really careful. So with 3 divided by 17, you want to move your decimal twice first and then round after you move your decimal, okay? So please keep that in mind. So that is converting fractions to percents, okay? Again, you got two methods. I don't care which method you choose, but you need to be able to back it up with work. We are letting you use a calculator now, but you still have to show the work. The calculator is only doing the side work for you. Please, please, please keep that in mind, okay? Now, do we have... I think I'm going to do one more video, even though we've got writing a fraction as a percent. I think I'm going to do one extra topic here. So we're going to have one more video after this one, then we'll be done.